There's a unique horror we feel after a mass shooting. For the victim's family, one more part of ordinary life has become a killing field. It's hard for any public place to feel safe. As the killings repeat with new shooters taking inspiration from previous ones, the rest of us feel the clock start again. How much time until the next slaughter? What would it take to stop this? In the wake of these tragedies, some politicians and media pundits tout gun control as the obvious solution. But it's not as satisfying an answer as I once hoped. I used to be strongly pro-gun control as an answer to mass shootings. Stop the guns, stop the killings. It felt like common sense legislation until I dug into the practical details. A few years ago, I worked with a team of researchers analyzing the tens of thousands of lives lost to gun violence annually. Mass killings dominate the headlines, but they're a small percentage, just 1% of the gun deaths in America. And unfortunately, they're some of the hardest deaths to prevent. There are gun deaths we have more power to prevent, but the best interventions go beyond restrictions on assault rifles. Let me explain. Of all the stats I uncovered, one of the most arresting is that over half of gun deaths aren't homicides. They're suicides. In 2022, 54% of gun deaths in the United States were suicides, mostly older white men. Digging deeper into the other 46% of gun deaths, you'll find that in 2019, homicide rates were highest for young men ages 15 to 24, often dying at the hands of other young men. And 20% of homicides in 2020 were killings of women, mostly at the hands of a current or former domestic partner. Each of these populations needs different forms of help. The proposed solutions by politicians often focus on three tactics: banning assault weapons, increasing the prevalence of background checks, and decreasing magazine sizes. But assault weapons bans won't solve handgun violence, which accounts for most murders. Most mass shooters pass the background checks, and shrinking magazines won't stop suicides and many homicides. In fact, any practiced shooter can swap a magazine in seconds, so smaller ones will do little even to mitigate mass shootings. Gun violence cannot be remedied by a one-size-fits-all gun control policy. The more I looked at the data, the more it felt like some politicians measured the efficacy of a policy by how much it ticked off gun owners, not how much help it could offer potential victims. So what can really get the job done? Targeted intervention. When we aim at one-size-fits-all solutions, we're shortchanging each of the most at-risk groups. Those at risk of suicide need companionship and commitment. Young men whose lives are shaped by cycles of vengeance need paths out of gang violence, and male mentors who have chosen to forego vengeance. Vulnerable women need legal protections from their abusers, perhaps even in the form of red flag laws that take guns out of the hands of the people we have the most reason to suspect will use them to kill. We need families, churches, and good community organizations that advocate for these groups. To be clear, I still don't like guns, but I won't support policies that are shallow attempts to score points. Stopping gun violence goes deeper. It goes right to the heart, mind, and soul of the person behind the gun. So what about that 1%? How can we anticipate and prevent mass shootings? That's a more complicated solution than we have time for here. I sat down for a longer interview to discuss topics like this. In the next video, we'll tackle the mass shooting trend head on. So click or tap here, and I'll see you in the next video. I'm Leah Sargeant, writer and statistician for Edify.